Welcome to another deep dive. Today we're digging into some really timely AI updates.
Yeah, think of this as your fast track to understanding what's really going on in AI right now. Our goal is just to pull out the key insights, maybe some surprising bits from these updates so you can quickly get a handle on it all.
And looking at the summary and the material, we've got quite a bit to cover. We'll start with Apple's upcoming event and, well, maybe the lack of big AI news expected.
Then we'll dive into how AI is clashing or maybe collaborating with the music industry, those licensing deals.
Oh, and this one was interesting. AI apparently acing emotional intelligence tests. We need to unpack that.
For sure. Plus updates on things like new voice agents, AI that might be able to improve itself, and even some potential military uses.
We're also going to touch on that whole black box problem, the efforts to actually understand how these AIs think.
And then a quick roundup of other significant AI news bits from the sources. And finally, some trending AI tools you might find useful for productivity.
Okay, let's jump in. First up, Apple. The sources, mentioning Bloomberg's Mark Gurman, suggest the upcoming WWDC might be, well, a bit underwhelming on the AI front.
That's the read, yeah. The material calls it potentially an AI gap year for Apple, suggesting the really big AI features might be pushed out towards 2026.
A gap year
Yeah.
in this climate. That sounds risky. What specifics in the sources point to that?
Well, the documents suggest Apple's main AI play this time might be opening up their smaller 3 billion parameter models to developers.
Developers can build custom AI features into third-party apps using these smaller models.
Right. But the sources kind of imply these models might be a bit limited compared to what competitors are already offering with their larger models.
Okay, so maybe not cutting-edge capabilities there. What else are they planning to do to, keep up the AI appearance?
The material mentions plans to maybe rebrand some existing features using AI terminology, and possibly a new OS naming system to help shift perception, make it sound more AI-focused, even if the tech isn't brand new right now.
So a bit of repositioning. What about the bigger projects we've heard whispers about? Like a totally revamped Siri.
According to the source material, yeah, several of those big AI projects seem to be stuck. That includes the LLM-powered Siri overhaul, that health project, Project Mulberry, and even a potential ChatGPT competitor with web search built in.
Wow, an LLM Siri feels like table stakes now. The sources really say those are on hold.
Seems like it. Indicates they just aren't quite ready. Although the material does mention, citing Gurman again, that Apple has a much larger 150 billion parameter model.
Okay.
And apparently it's testing close to ChatGPT quality internally.
Right, that sounds more like Apple. So if it's testing well, what's the holdup there?
The sources point to ongoing accuracy concerns and also some internal disagreements among the leadership about releasing it just yet.
Got it. So bringing this together, why does this potential gap year, as the sources frame it, really matter?
It really highlights the pressure Apple's under. The source suggests huge expectations, but maybe slower progress internally compared to the competition, which is just moving incredibly fast.
So pausing might let them refine things for a stronger 2026 launch.
Maybe. That could be the strategy. But the big question the material raises is, will the market wait?
Because the competitors aren't pausing.
Exactly. They're not slowing down at all. So this gap year, if that's what it is, could let others widen the gap before Apple makes its next big AI move.
Okay, fascinating dynamics there. Let's shift gears now from Apple to the music industry. The source material talks about major record labels, Universal, Warner, Sony being in talks with AI music startups like Udio and Suno.
Yeah, this is a classic tech disruption story playing out again. The core of these talks, according to the sources, is negotiating licensing deals.
Licensing deals?
Yeah.
For using their music to train the AIs, or for the music the AIs generate?
It sounds like both, really. The aim is to sort out these lawsuits that have already been filed against the AI companies for copyright infringement.
Right, I remember seeing those.
And also to set up a system for the future, how artists and labels get paid when AI uses their stuff.
So the labels want compensation for their catalogs being, ingested by these models. What are they asking for specifically?
The sources say they're pushing for licensing fees, basically payment for using the copyrighted works, and also, interestingly, equity stakes in the AI startups.
A piece of the company itself.
Yeah.
And these talks are happening while lawsuits are active. The source mentions suits from 2024.
Exactly. The material points out these lawsuits are serious, seeking damages up to potentially $150,000 per song infringed. Given the scale, that could run into billions.
Billions. Okay, that definitely adds pressure to find a deal.
For sure. The sources say the negotiations are happening in parallel with the legal action. So there's a kind of race. The first company to secure a deal might get out of the legal mess faster.
It does feel like Napster or the streaming shift all over again, doesn't it?
The source material draws that parallel too. But one key difference highlighted is that the labels seem maybe a bit more open to negotiating this time around compared to how they fought streaming initially.
So why does this matter beyond just music? Is this a wider trend?
Yeah, the sources suggest it is. Licensing AI use is becoming a real, potentially big, new revenue source. We're seeing similar moves, according to the material, between AI firms and news publishers, even social media sites. It's often looking like a better option than fighting long, expensive court battles.
Okay, now for something that honestly made me do a double take when reading the sources. Research out of universities in Geneva and Bern about AI and emotional intelligence tests.
Right. And the finding is pretty wild. AI systems, including ChatGPT, apparently scored higher than humans on these tests.
Wait, AI is better at emotional intelligence. How did they even measure that, according to the sources?
The material says they use standard EQ assessments. They tested 6 different models, GPT-4, Gemini 1.5 Flash, Claude 3.5 Haiku. Others gave them scenarios, asked for the most emotionally appropriate response.
And the results.
The AIs averaged 81% correct, humans taking the same tests. Average was much lower, around 56%.
Wow, 81 versus 56, that's significant.
Yeah.
It suggests AI has a good grasp of the patterns of appropriate emotional responses.
And there's another bit in the source material. GPT-4 wasn't just good at taking the tests. It could also quickly generate new, valid EQ assessments itself.
So it understands the structure, the concepts. Does this mean AI is, feeling things now?
No. The researchers are clear on that AI doesn't feel. But what the sources suggest they believe is that this shows AI has a strong handle on emotional concepts and reasoning, identifying, understanding, responding appropriately. It's maybe more than just pattern matching.
Okay, so it's sophisticated mimicry, maybe. But being able to pick the optimal emotional response is still pretty remarkable. What are the implications?
That's the key takeaway. The source highlights how this ability, even without actual feeling, could be super valuable in fields needing sensitive human interaction.
Like therapy bots.
Yeah.
Or customer service.
Exactly. Mental health support, customer service, education, the material points to these areas. It shows potential for using these LLMs in ways we might have thought required genuine human empathy.
Let's shift to some specific company news now. First, 11 Labs and their voice AI.
Right. They just launched Conversational AI 2.0. The source describes it as a big step for creating really lifelike voice agents.
What can you do with it?
The material says you can build custom agents like AI concierges, tutors, game characters. Key things noted are super low latency for smooth chat. It can switch languages on the fly and handle text and voice input together.
And it doesn't interrupt as much. That's always awkward.
Yeah, the sources mention a new model specifically for better turn-taking, so the AI is less likely to talk over you. Makes it feel more natural.
Good. Okay, next. Sakana AI. Something about a self-improving model.
This one's really out there. This Japanese startup unveiled what they're calling a Darwin Gödel machine, or DGM. The source material suggests it might be the first AI that can actually improve itself.
Self-improving.
Yeah.
How? What can it do?
The DGM is basically an LLM that can look at its own code, its own structure, and rewrite it. It takes in new info, makes guesses about how to get better, tests them, and then adjusts itself, updates its own worldview, so to speak.
Whoa. It
Why?
evolves itself. Did the source give an example?
Yeah, there was an experiment mentioned using the SWE bench coding test. That's a benchmark for fixing bugs in real code. The DGM apparently started at 20% accuracy.
Okay.
And just by fiddling with its own code, it boosted its score to 50%.
It taught itself to code better by rewriting itself.
Yeah.
That's something else. And finally, Meta getting into military tech.
According to the sources, yeah, they're partnering with Endural, that's Palmer Luckey's defense tech company, valued at $28 billion. They're reportedly working on AI-powered gear for the U.S. Army.
What kind of gear? And what's the AI doing?
The material mentions things like advanced helmets, glasses. The AI part is meant to boost a soldier's senses, like helping them spot drones far away or identify hidden enemies better.
Right. Let's talk about understanding these complex AI models.
Yeah.
That black box issue. The sources mentioned Anthropic is doing some interesting work here.
Yeah, it's a huge deal. As AI gets more capable, knowing why it does what it does is crucial. Anthropic's been pushing on this.
What have they done recently, based on the source material?
The material mentions that earlier this year, they showed off a method they developed to kind of map out the internal reasoning steps Claude takes when it answers a prompt.
And they found something about how it thinks internally.
Yes, a key finding in the source was this idea that Claude seems to use a sort of universal language or internal representation first before translating that into, say, English or whatever language the prompt was in.
Fascinating. And now they're opening this up.
That's the big news here. Anthropic is open sourcing the framework they used. The source explains this means others can take smaller models, run them through this framework, and get visual maps of their inner workings. You could see what concepts light up for specific prompts.
Trying to make the black box a bit more gray.
Exactly. The source material suggests this is part of a wider push for more interpretability in AI.
And the material mentions some related research, too, something about Reddit.
Researchers from places like Stanford and Oxford created a benchmark using data from Reddit's Am I the A-hole forum
Seriously, why?
to test how flattering or agreeable different AI models are when responding to social dilemmas. A novel way to measure AI social dynamics.
Okay, so zooming out, why is all this black box work so important?
This really matters because, as the source highlights, understanding why an AI gives a certain output is key to improving it. It helps figure out how training data affects results, how to fix biases, and ultimately how to build models we can actually trust to be accurate and fair.
We've hit some big topics, but the source has also had a flurry of other interesting AI news nuggets. Let's do a quick rundown.
Yeah, the pace is just relentless.
Yeah.
So much happening.
Like OpenAI's vision for future hardware.
Right. OpenAI's COO, Brad Lightcap, was quoted talking about ambient systems, devices that just blend into your environment, helping with real-world stuff seamlessly.
Ambient. Like always there, but not intrusive.
Interesting. And Anthropic hit some big revenue numbers.
Yeah, reportedly $3 billion in annualized revenue now. The source said that's triple where they were just back in December 2024.
Wow, 3x in like 6 months. What's fueling that?
Mostly enterprise demand, according to the material, especially for code generation businesses using their AI to help developers.
And Meta's using AI for its own internal checks.
Sources reported Meta's automating up to 90% of its privacy and safety risk assessments with AI, apparently replacing a lot of human review work.
Meanwhile, Google DeepMind's video tool, Veo, is scaling fast.
Yeah, CEO Demis Hassabis mentioned millions of videos generated with Veo 3 just last week, following its wider rollout. And Google's also letting people run AI on their phones now.
The source mentioned an experimental app, AI Edge Gallery. Lets you download open models and run them locally on your device.
Could be good for privacy, speed. Any big funding news in the sources?
Just one major one highlighted. VC firm A16Z is reportedly leading a $300 million round for Abridge AI.
Abridge AI. What do they do again?
They focus on AI for transcribing and summarizing doctor-patient conversations, making healthcare notes easier. The source said this round values them at around $5.3 billion.
$5.3 billion shows the value seen in applying AI to specific problems like that.
Definitely. The source has also flagged a couple of Google tools becoming more available.
Gemini Live.
Yeah, Android and iOS users can try it now. You can share your screen or camera, ask Gemini questions about what you're seeing.
So it sees what you see.
Basically.
Yep.
And for coders, the source has noted Google's Jules coding assistant is now open to everyone with like 60 free tasks a day.
Handy. Any other quick tool updates?
Midjourney, the image AI, got updates. Source mentioned things like 40% faster image rendering and smarter moderation.
Faster's always good. And finally, a note on China's AI scene.
Yeah, a new report cited suggests China's really catching up, maybe even neck and neck with the US now, especially in open source AI. Not just 1 or 2 big labs, but maybe over 10 major players competing hard.
Okay, beyond the headlines, the source material also spotlighted some trending AI tools aimed at productivity. Let's quickly hit those.
Right, just tools getting some buzz right now, according to the sources.
For image editing.
Context was mentioned, described as an advanced image editing model.
Building reports.
That was Perplexity Labs. Helps you build reports, dashboards, apparently using multiple AI tools together.
Making slide decks faster.
Manus Slides. Uses agentic AI to create tailored presentations quickly.
Creating custom voices.
EVI3 lets you create custom voices using speech-to-speech. Sounds quite natural.
Email overload.
Xero. An AI-native email client that tries to manage your inbox for you.
Sales research.
Xero. An AI tool noted for building prospect lists really fast, like under 5 minutes.
And getting better at writing prompts.
Pretty prompt. Described basically as Grammarly for prompting, helps turn your ideas into prompts that actually work well with AI.
Wow, okay. We really covered a lot today. From Apple's maybe gap year and the music licensing fights to AI acing EQ tests and hints of self-improving code.
Yeah, and the efforts to understand the black box, plus all the other company news and those productivity tools, it really paints a picture of just how broad and fast-moving this AI space is right now.
Absolutely. And thinking about it all, AI is seeming to grasp emotional nuance, systems potentially rewriting themselves, automating safety reviews. It just hammers home how deeply AI is weaving itself into everything.
Yeah. It really does.
Yeah.
And those efforts to understand how it works, like Anthropic's research mentioned in the source, bring out a really important question for you, the listener, to chew on. As these AI tools get more powerful and touch more sensitive parts of our lives, how do we strike that right balance between harnessing all that potential and ensuring we still have transparency, trust, and ultimately control?
That's definitely the big question hanging over all of this. We really hope this deep dive into the sources gave you a clearer, faster picture of what's happening in AI right now.
Yeah, keep digging into these things, keep questioning based on what we talked about today.
And if you found this useful, please do consider following the show so you don't miss future deep dives. Sharing it with friends or colleagues who want to stay informed on AI would be fantastic too.